Individual choices are not going to solve the disaster that we are facing.
Fox News is back on their bullshit. Now, before I show you their new attack on Bernie Sanders, let me just say that this is the kind of argument that I think works on a lot of people. People that are not educated on what the real solutions are in dealing with climate change. It definitely worked on me back in the day. So let me first show you what it is. Fox News. Bernie Sanders spent nearly $300,000 on private air travel in October. Now, this is very similar to the kind of argument that was used against Al Gore, who I guess was charged with, driving a car and taking airplanes and having a big house to heat. That because Al Gore is a climate advocate, that he can't be doing those things because it shows he's hypocritical. So that argument worked on me back in the day. I thought, yeah, doesn't that make him hypocritical? Well, why is he doing this? But it's a very uneducated position. Once you understand what the actual solutions are, you realize that individual actions like this don't change anything. So I will get to that after this first clip, but let me show you Nomiki Konst, who is running for public advocate in New York City. She was on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News discussing this new attack against Bernie Sanders. And I'll start here with the first clip where Tucker Carlson is essentially making the same comparison with Bernie to Al Gore.
I honestly, I really don't get it. So if you're Al Gore and you say, nothing is more important than climate change, I'm a better person than you are because I care more than you. By the way, I have one of the largest houses in Nashville and I fly private and I take a Suburban to the private airport, to the FBO. Why should I be okay? I mean, sincerely, why is that okay?
That is not going to individual choices are not going to solve the disaster that we are facing. We already have a migration issue. We already have flooding. We already have hurricanes that have hit Puerto Rico, have hit New Orleans, have hit Florida, and have displaced so many working people. This is an industry change. We have to cap emissions globally.
But hold on.
And if we don't cap emissions with big industries and policy, then those individual choices mean nothing.
Okay, well, first of all, hold on.
All right, so Nomiki Konst here does a good job at beginning the conversation on pushing back against Tucker Carlson and this argument. So the argument, as I said, that Tucker's making is one that I used to fall for until I realized what the solutions were. So let me try and explain this with the help of Jacobin editor Mika Utrick. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism, said Mika Utrick, associate editor of the socialist magazine Jacobin. Exploitation is baked into the system. In fact, Utrick, a dues-paying member of the Democratic Socialists of America, argues that dwelling on individual consumption decisions could serve as a distraction from more meaningful forms of political struggle. So this really is the basis of it. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. There is no way to engage in this system to be a part of society without essentially being hypocritical if you are to critique it. So, for example, Bernie Sanders wants to raise wages. Does that mean that now he can't go out and eat food because because waitresses or fast food employees aren't being paid properly? Does it mean that he can't go and buy new clothes somewhere because people that are selling those clothes aren't being paid properly? I mean, you can take this to anything. Can he not drive a car or be driven anywhere because it takes gas? So just because you have a critique of the system does not mean that you cannot engage in that system. This is the system that we currently live in. The idea is to change the system, because if you take yourself out of the system, you're not going to change it. If you can't drive to the airport, then you're not going to have you're not going to be able to have a global discussion or go anywhere to spread the word about this. You're not going to be able to be a politician or any advocate talking about this issue. If you can critique any little thing. This can go as far as you want it to go, because the whole argumentation doesn't make any sense when our critique is that we want to change the system, change the policy, change the industry that impacts this issue. So let me go to the next clip here where Tucker is just back for more.
Individual choices matter, or else what's the point of any of this, okay? So it does start with, liberals used to say it starts with one person. I guess they don't anymore because they don't want to be held to their own standards. But the solutions are always like, ordinary working people ought to pay higher gas taxes.
It's not the solution at all. And actually, we are against that. Progressives versus the neoliberals and neocons, progressives understand that this needs to be a huge policy change. The place where we are right now, if we increase the temperature 1 degree, you and I won't be living in D.C. and New York anymore.
Okay, but
we will be displaced.
Okay, so Nomiki here nails it again. Progressives and democratic socialists are not for negatively impacting the end consumer. We're not for impacting the poor and the middle class. What we are for is something like a cap and trade system that impacts the biggest polluters. That's how we plan to address the system, with a proper policy change. Something like a fuel tax, which is a tax at the end consumer that negatively impacts the poor and the middle class the most. We are not in support of that. That is a neoliberal policy. So you have to understand the difference here. Democratic socialists and progressives are for going after the biggest polluters, the corporations. We are not for negatively impacting the end consumer. Now, let's go to the next clip here where there's a little more of this.
Let me just ask you a really simple question. Would the solutions that you're espousing now, would they raise the price of gasoline for wage earners, the ones you claim to care about?
I'm actually
gas would be the same price.
I am against raising consumer prices. That is a neoliberal design. I am a democratic socialist. I think we should pass policies and actually make rich people, millionaires and billionaires and corporations, pay taxes. That's the problem. No one at the top is paying taxes, and the burden is going to the consumer.
Okay, again, Nomiki once again exactly explains what our position here is. So progressives and democratic socialists are for ensuring that people at the top are paying their fair share. Now look, in a cap and trade system or in a carbon tax system, could some of those costs possibly fall to the end consumer through the corporations that are being affected by that carbon tax or that cap and trade system? Yes, that could happen. But by ensuring that the people at the top are taxed properly, that would offset any costs that would affect the poor and the middle class. So this is the idea behind the policy here, is to ensure that people at the top and the corporations are paying their fair share, and that the end consumer, in terms of the poor and the middle class, are not being negatively impacted. Now let me go to the last clip here where it gets into private planes, and I have a little surprise for Tucker Carlson after this clip.
You would allow private planes to fly, I guess, right?
I think private planes have an obligation to change their standards. That is what policy is all about.
Well, if we didn't regulate water, planes.
Solar private plane, I mean, I don't know how that would function, but I think that there are other efficient forms of energy.
Name one. Use. Really quick, just for fun. Name a renewable energy source that could power an airplane.
Well, I mean, we see it with cars.
Hemp? No, I'm seriously.
You could charge. I mean, there are. Do you know what a Prius is and a Tesla is? You could do that at the level of private planes.
An electric airplane, a big electric airplane.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm no engineer, but I have heard of electric cars and airplanes and other forms of electric solutions. I mean, there's also solar generated, so that the electricity that you're charging with is solar energy.
We're back to the solar plane. Good.
Or wind generated.
I'd be psyched for that. Text me a picture if you find one on the internet.
Oh, Tucker, you're such a dick. Text me a picture of that if you find one on the internet. Well, here you go. Aviation aircraft, designed to take 9 passengers up to 650 miles at a cruise speed of 240 knots. Alice will redefine regional transportation as an all-electric aircraft. And commercial flights for that are planned to start in 2021. And there's also a JetBlue-backed hybrid that plans to start taking test flights next year. So the technology for these things is already here, and they are beginning to roll it out. And the next step, of course, would be to commercial flight, but just like any technology, it has to start somewhere and eventually make its way to more and more people. So if Tucker did a little bit of research, maybe he would have found that out. Now, just to wrap up the bigger point here, again, progressives and democratic socialists are for enacting policy that will have impact industry-wide. Individual action does not change anything. And the idea that if Bernie didn't take any private jets, or if Al Gore wasn't driven in a Suburban or something, I mean, the idea that any of these individual actions would have somehow changed the industry is completely absurd. You have to work from within the society that we currently live in, and we currently live in a capitalist society that, yes, has a lot of these unethical problems going on, but there is no way out of it until you change the system. You have to engage in the system to change it. Maybe your clothes were made in through unethical practices. Maybe they were sold to you by somebody not making enough money. Maybe you get fast food from employees that also don't make enough money. I mean, you can really extend this to anything. That's why the focus always is on policy. Change the policy and you change the industry and you change the system. That's how you enact real change.